Choosing when to retire is one of the toughest and most important decisions that a footballer will ever make, if indeed it isn't taken out of their own hands due to injuries. I'm always fascinated by the contrast between those who want to prolong their careers for as long as possible, even if that means dropping down through the divisions, moving abroad, or not playing quite as often, versus those who want to go out virtually at their very best, with zero signs of regression, and only be remembered as the best version of themselves. Xabi Alonso and Philipp Lahm, for example, both retired at the end of the 2016-17 season at Bayern Munich, as still two of the finest players in world football in their respective positions, and probably capable of playing at the highest level for at least another couple of seasons, whereas Teddy Sheringham had no qualms about dropping down into the Championship with West Ham United and later Colchester United in order to keep on playing into his 40s. And Rivaldo, a Ballon d'Or winner no less, was willing to traipse all the way to Uzbekistan, Angola, and down into the third tier of the Brazilian game in an effort to prolong his own playing days and perhaps bump up his career earnings. It's a stark contrast, but of course, most players fall down somewhere in the middle. For that reason, genuinely awe-inspiring final seasons in football are pretty rare. If you're still the star man at a great team, most players simply won't retire, even if they had initially planned to, because their clubs are desperate to keep them, and they feel confident about being able to contribute for at least another season. There are some exceptions. Toni Kroos this season is among the most notable. Aged 34, Kroos is still comfortably among the best players on the planet in his position, if not the very best at what he does, some might even argue. Not only that, because of his style of play, pinging balls about and dictating games, without ever having been the quickest or the most dynamic, Kroos probably could play at the very highest level for another 3, maybe even 4 seasons, without barely even having to adapt his game. Kroos made 48 appearances this season as an integral part of a La Liga and Champions League double-winning Real Madrid team, and could even put the icing on the cake with a Euros crown on home soil with Germany this month. I should point out that I am recording this before Germany's quarter-final tie against either Spain or Georgia, so it is conceivable that they could have been knocked out of the Euros, but even then, Kroos' final season before retirement would still go down as one of the greatest of all time. But what's the greatest? Well, today that's what we're going to try and figure out. To be clear, I am being a stickler for the rules. It has to actually be a player's very last season in which they made any competitive appearances, which cruelly rules out Tom Finney's final season at Preston, owing to his solitary game for Distillery, Dirk Kuyt's legendary final campaign at Feyenoord due to the 3 games that he played for Quick Boys, and even Edwin van der Sar, who made a single appearance for VV Noordwijk 5 years after an exquisite final season with Manchester United. I also won't be including players who died during their careers because it distorts the list somewhat and is also just slightly depressing. Without further ado then, whose last season in which he actually played was a disappointing 14-game stint with the Las Vegas Lights in 2018, here are 7 of the greatest final seasons before retiring that footballers have ever had. 7th, Oliver Kahn. A greatly underrated final campaign, Oliver Kahn is one of the greatest goalkeepers to have ever lived, and his final season was, as far as I'm aware, the best final season that a goalkeeper has ever had. That is high praise indeed, because goalkeepers obviously tend to have longer careers and are often able to compete at the highest level for a little bit longer than outfield players. I should also add, if you're thinking, what about Dino Zoff, the season in which he won the Serie A title and captained Italy to glory at the World Cup, 1981-82, was actually his penultimate season, and while his 1982-83 season still made my shortlist, Kahn's last season tops it. Signed by Bayern Munich for around €2.3 million from Karlsruhe in 1994, Kahn spent 14 seasons as Bayern's number 1, winning 8 Bundesliga titles, a UEFA Champions League, and 13 other trophies. His last season before retiring was the 2007-08 campaign, age 38, with Kahn announcing that it would be his last season at the beginning of the campaign. Kahn said that the announcement made him feel liberated and spurred on, stating, quote, "That constant pressure to be number 1 is gone." His confidence throughout that season was evident. In 42 appearances, the German legend only conceded 36 goals, or an average of 0.85 goals per game, keeping 17 clean sheets in the process. Bayern won the Bundesliga title by 10 points, having missed out to Stuttgart the previous season, principally because they conceded fewer than half the number of goals that season as second-place Wolfsburg. Bayern also won the DFB Pokal, meaning Kahn bowed out with a double as club captain, putting in one of the finest seasons in one of the finest careers a goalkeeper has ever had. So, it's not a bad place to get us started. 6th, Michael Laudrup. A bit of a left-field inclusion perhaps, Michael Laudrup's final season in football might not be that revered outside of the Netherlands, but in so many ways, it was practically flawless. When you think of Michael Laudrup, or at least when I do, he feels almost as synonymous with Ajax as he does with Juventus or Barcelona. That's despite the fact that Laudrup only ever spent a single season at Ajax, his last ever season, and only ever played 30 games for the club. Laudrup was only 33 in his last ever season, and as one of the most naturally gifted footballers of all time, it is little surprise that he was still capable of winning any game of football and being one of the best players in the world. Laudrup joined Ajax off the back of a year in Japan, starring for Vissel Kobe, and a messy contract registration situation in Bosnia. It was the 1997-98 season. The previous season, Ajax had dropped to 4th in the Eredivisie, their worst league finish since the early 1960s. Alongside Laudrup, the Dutch Giants also signed Georgian poacher Shota Arveladze, and the pair of them would have a transformative impact on the Ajax team. Arveladze scored 25 goals in the Eredivisie and 37 in all competitions, so his contribution could be very easily measured, but Laudrup just seemed to have been born to play for Ajax. Honed in the art of total football in Cruyff's dream team at Barcelona, he became the team's talisman and the key exponent of the Ajax style, despite the fact that he had only just arrived. His stats were also exceptional, it should be said. He scored 13 goals and made 10 assists from only 30 appearances, predominantly off the left flank, averaging a goal contribution once every 95 minutes, but his impact extended way beyond mere goals and assists alone. His performances not only inspired Ajax back to the summit of the Dutch game, they won the Liga de Cantona, finishing an enormous 17 points above runners-up PSV. They were no less emphatic in the KNVB Cup, with Laudrup starring in a front four that thrashed PSV 5-0 in the final, meaning that Laudrup, like Kahn, won a pretty stunning double in his last ever season playing football. Ajax would have loved to have kept Laudrup for at least another season, as would almost every team in world football given his ability and performance levels, but the Dane, who was famed for his self-confidence and stubbornness, was unwavering in his decision to retire at 33. Incidentally, Laudrup also called time much earlier than most on a very promising managerial career, following success in Spain, Swansea and West Asia, stating his intention not to grow old on the touchline and to spend more time relaxing with his family. Just as an aside, Michael's brother, Brian Laudrup, also had an excellent final season, also at Ajax, which was also his only season with Ajax, just 2 seasons after Michael, in which he scored 15 goals, but didn't manage to win any silverware like Michael. 5th, Zinedine Zidane. Possibly the most high-profile great final season in modern times, there were probably some of you who expected Zinedine Zidane's 2005-06 campaign to top this 7. That is principally because when people think of Zidane's final season, they think almost exclusively of the 2006 World Cup, in which he was outstanding, and may well have inspired France to a second World Cup had he not completely lost his rag and headbutted Marco Materazzi in his last ever game of competitive football. If Zidane had played like he did at the 2006 World Cup all season, he may well have topped this 7, and it was illustrative of the fact that, at his best, Zizou was still firmly among the best players in the world when he retired, if not still the very best. For Real Madrid, however, Zidane certainly wasn't bad in the 2005-06 season. He scored 9 goals and made 11 assists for a Real Madrid team that finished second in La Liga, reached the semi-finals of the Copa del Rey and the round of 16 of the Champions League, but I don't think that he was better than either Oliver Kahn or Michael Laudrup in their last seasons, nor any of the players who are still to come. Zidane, more so than almost anyone else who has ever played the game, appeared to have been born with a ball at his feet, and made football look like an effortless pursuit in which it would be harder to make a bad touch than a perfect one. Age did nothing to erode Zizou's touch, technique, dribbling, vision or weight of pass, and indeed, just like Laudrup, Zidane really wasn't that old in his final season, only turning 34 at the World Cup. He still would have walked into every team in world football, as was illustrated by the fact that he made the 2006 World Cup All-Star 11, the 2006 FIFA Pro World 11, and won both the IFFHS World's Best Playmaker Award and the World Cup Golden Ball as the best player at that tournament, despite his red card in the final. Despite retiring from football midway through 2006, following the World Cup, Ronaldinho, Thierry Henry, Gianluigi Buffon and Fabio Cannavaro were the only 4 players to finish above him in 2006 Ballon d'Or voting. That surely has to just about skirt over a very good, rather than outstanding club campaign to earn Zizou a spot in 5th, which, incidentally, was of course his iconic shirt number. That's not why I put him there. It's just one of life's many happy coincidences. 4th, Eric Cantona. Michael Laudrup and Zinedine Zidane may have been 33 and 34 when they hung up their boots, but Eric Cantona can go better than that. The mercurial Frenchman shocked the world of football back in 1997 when he announced his sudden retirement at the age of only 30, stating that he had lost his passion for football and wanted to try his hand at doing other things. Following his retirement, Cantona moved into acting, advertising, beach soccer, and even a brief directorship with the New York Cosmos. Before his retirement, he was one of the greatest and most impactful foreign players ever to have graced the English game. Signed by Leeds United in 1992, having already been a French international for the past 5 years, Leeds made one of the greatest transfer blunders of all time when they approached Manchester United over their interest in fullback Dennis Irwin, only for the Red Devils to shut them down but inquire as to whether Cantona might be available. Ferguson was only interested in signing Cantona, initially, because new arrival Dion Dublin had just suffered a devastating leg break, ruling him out for the rest of the season. Leeds considered Cantona, for all of his obvious talent, to be a bit of a loose cannon, someone who could upset the dressing room and be a little bit volatile. They weren't wrong about any of that in some respects, but where they focused on the downsides, Alex Ferguson focused on the upsides. For all of his volatility and occasional moments of madness, Cantona had a ferocious talent, an incredible will to win, and a huge aura about him. Whereas he had just won the league at Leeds, Manchester United hadn't won it since the 60s, but Cantona would prove to be the missing piece of the jigsaw in Ferguson and Man United's search for greatness. Cantona had 5 sublime seasons at Old Trafford, in which he won 4 Premier League titles. The 1996-97 season was his last, and Cantona showed 0 signs of regression. He scored 15 goals and made 16 assists in all competitions, including winning goals against Leeds, Southampton, and Blackburn Rovers. Manchester United won the title by 7 points, and Cantona topped the Premier League's assist charts. A magnificent end to a magnificent career, as Cantona bowed out, just as he has always played the game, on his own terms. 3rd, Frank Rijkaard. Outside of it falling within a World Cup year and the Netherlands winning it, Frank Rijkaard basically had the perfect final season in football. Having rejoined Ajax in 1993, age 31, where he spent the first 7.5 years of his career, during the intervening period Rijkaard had starred most notably for AC Milan, where he won 2 Serie A titles and 2 European Cups in only 5 seasons. Rijkaard's Ajax return wasn't just going to be some kind of sentimental swan song though. Ajax had only won 1 Eredivisie title in 8 years since Rijkaard departed, and the previous season they'd finished 3rd below both Feyenoord and PSV. In his first season back, Ajax reclaimed the Eredivisie title, with Rijkaard running the show from central midfield, as well as chipping in with a hugely impressive 10 goals from only 30 league appearances. That might have felt like the perfect return, but in truth, the best was still to come. The following season, which was Rijkaard's last in the sport, he dropped deeper still, becoming a sweeper, and operating in tandem with centre-back Danny Blind in a fluid back 3 or 4, depending on whether Ajax were in or out of possession. Rijkaard and, to a lesser extent, Blind were the only older heads and more experienced players in an incredibly youthful but also incredibly talented Ajax squad. Alongside young players like Edwin van der Sar, Clarence Seedorf, Edgar Davids, Jari Litmanen, Mark Overmars, and Nwankwo Kanu, Rijkaard was the cool head and one of the best sweepers in the world, who had been there and done it, kept everyone's feet on the ground, and turned a promising Ajax team into a winning machine. Ajax went invincible in the Eredivisie, scoring 106 goals and only conceding 28, to claim a second successive league title following Rijkaard's return, but even more remarkably, they went invincible in the UEFA Champions League, beating Rijkaard's former club AC Milan not once, not twice, but 3 times, twice during the group stage, and for a 3rd time in the final. In his final season, therefore, Rijkaard played 39 games for Ajax, was practically faultless, and led the club to an invincible Eredivisie title and UEFA Champions League double. If anything, I've done him dirty only putting him in 3rd. Second, Johan Cruyff. Everyone in this list, somewhat inevitably, was a great player, but none were finer than Johan Cruyff. Arguably the greatest European footballer of all time, Cruyff initially retired from football in 1978, when he left Barcelona, aged only 31. By that stage, he'd already reshaped Ajax and Barcelona in his own image, 2 of the biggest clubs in world football, and with it, the sport as a whole, and won 3 successive European Cups and Ballon d'Ors at his best. After losing millions to a scam investment in pig farming, Cruyff relocated to the United States, and 11 months after his first retirement, he signed a lucrative contract with the Los Angeles Aztecs in the North American Soccer League. He may have been playing in the United States, but Cruyff was still among the best players on the planet, and in his only season with the Aztecs, he inevitably won the 1979 NASL Player of the Year award, beating the likes of Franz Beckenbauer, Giorgio Canaglia, and his compatriot Johan Neeskens. Moves to the Washington Diplomats, Levante, and then a return to the Washington Diplomats followed before, in 1981, 8 years after his departure, Cruyff rejoined Ajax. Any doubts about his talents after retiring and playing stateside were quickly extinguished, as Cruyff helped Ajax to 2 Eredivisie titles and a KNVB Cup in 2 seasons. At the end of the 1982-83 season, having recently turned 36, Cruyff was happy to play on at Ajax for at least 1 more season, but owing to his injury problems, Ajax didn't offer their greatest player of all time the 1-year extension that he wanted. Insulted and angered, Cruyff joined Ajax's fiercest rivals Feyenoord, hoping to prove that he could still star at the highest level. To say that he succeeded in that goal would be a pretty significant understatement. Cruyff stayed fit all season, starring in all but one of Feyenoord's 34 Eredivisie matches, and making 44 appearances in all competitions. His fine form, playing in a deeper role, drifting between central and attacking midfield, but still managing to chip in with 13 goals, won Cruyff his 5th and final Dutch Footballer of the Year award, as well as inspiring Feyenoord to an Eredivisie and KNVB Cup double, as Ajax fell to 3rd in the league without him, and were knocked out of the KNVB Cup by, you guessed it, Cruyff's Feyenoord. Cruyff's last season was iconic, inspired, and so typical of a man who was better at football than almost anyone else who has ever lived, and always had an extra gear to step into. First, Marco van Basten. Alright, look, we're gonna have to talk about the Dutch. In the immortal words of Roy Hodgson, "What's going on here?" The top 3 in this 7 are all Dutch, and one of the other 7, Michael Laudrup, also played his final season at Ajax. Among my other shortlisted players, which included the likes of Mario de Castro, Pavel Nedved, Roberto Baggio, Gianfranco Zola, Pele, Dino Zoff, Georgi Hagi and Sami Hyypiä, there was another Dutchman who came close to featuring, Robin van Persie, who scored 18 goals in his final campaign at Feyenoord. Meanwhile, Edwin van der Sar and Dirk Kuyt, as I mentioned in the introduction, were only prevented from being considered due to harsh technicalities. Either windmills, wearing clogs, or just being really good at football without ever winning any international trophies must bestow you with some kind of supernatural powers of longevity that makes sure that players go out with a bang. In Marco van Basten's case, unlike Rijkaard, Cruyff, and everyone else for that matter in this seven, he didn't retire of his own volition and therefore didn't get the chance to bow out on his own terms. That is a great shame, because the game was denied of at least 5 or 6 more years of one of the greatest centre-forwards of all time. But it means that Marco van Basten's final season in football was truly the greatest final season that anyone has ever had. Basically the perfect number 9, Van Basten was big, athletic, elegant, skillful, intelligent, and ruthless in front of goal. Despite playing his last game at the age of only 28, in a short career, Van Basten scored 283 goals in 379 games for only Ajax and AC Milan, 24 goals from 58 caps for the Netherlands, and won a mind-blowing 20 trophies, including 7 league titles, 2 European Cups, and a Euros. He also won 3 Ballon d'Ors, a joint record which put him tied with Michel Platini and Johan Cruyff before Messi and Ronaldo came along. His last season, in which he suffered the last of a series of ankle injuries that forced him to retire, was the 1992-93 campaign. Injuries restricted Van Basten to just 22 appearances, in which he scored 20 goals and made 5 assists. In total, Van Basten averaged a goal or an assist once every 74.5 minutes, at a time when Serie A was the best league in the world, with by far the strongest defences. Had Van Basten played a full season, Milan, who reached the Champions League final that season but lost it against Marseille, quite possibly would have won the quadruple, and Van Basten would have won a then record-breaking 4th Ballon d'Or. Basically, he has to top this 7. That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. I obviously hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and it goes without saying at this stage, doesn't it? Make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on, not just for this channel, HITC Sevens, but also my second channel, Alfie Potts Armour, both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might fancy watching after this one. You could also find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads via the username at HITC Sevens on all 3. Should you wish to do so, and all of those links plus a whole lot more good stuff should be down in the video description below. Cheers.